afternoon, and thank you for staying with us. When you talk about diversity and inclusion, the conversations tend to focus on gender and race. But increasingly, you have to go beyond that. You have to include disability. People with disabilities find themselves facing a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles, and they run the risk of being disadvantaged every day globally. Now, before we start the conversation, and I'm really excited to have our panelists today, I just want to do 2 poll questions back to back just to get a sense of how much we know about disabilities. If we can flash the first poll question, please. How many disabled people are there in the world? 1 in 700, 1 in 70, or 1 in 7? If we could have some sense of where we are right now. Okay, 1 in 70, some say 1 in 7, the least is 1 in 700. You're not bad. And question number 2, at what age do most people acquire the disability? At birth, youth 15 to 24, working ages 18 to 64.
I would think.
What's the sense there? If we have your answers, at birth. Okay, this is where you go wrong. If we take a look at the global population, we have about 7.7 billion. 1 in 7 are disabled. So when it comes to the disabled people in the world, we have more than 1 billion people. And most of the disabled acquire the disability in their career, that is aged between 18 and 64. Essentially, what that means is that all of us here are at risk of developing some sort of disability in our career. Now, I know that we want to start a discussion, but Vishal wants to do some kind of an exercise with you before we start. Vishal, go ahead.
Yeah, let's do some adventure. Can I request each one of you to stand up?
Can we have everybody stand up, please?
Can I request you to close your eyes?
Shut your eyes. Don't cheat.
Please. Turn around.
Turn around where you are.
Shake hands and strike a conversation for the next 30 seconds with someone in front of you. Make an introduction. You're next to you. You're next to you. Just make an introduction.
Keep your eyes shut. Don't cheat.
You can open your eyes and be seated back to your seats.
You can open your eyes now and take your seat.
Seats, yeah. How did you guys feel? Did you stumble in finding someone else's hand? Did you guys have to guess from someone else's tone and voice, the gender, their ethnicity, and the person's looks, and you had to imagine how the other person looks? But that's my day-to-day life. That's the life that most sight-impaired people live. That's the life, in some sort, any one of us can be held in a moment, because each moment has the power to change your life. At the age of 17, my life changed. So think about it. What do you want to do to your life? Because that moment can arrive to any one of us without ringing a bell.
Vishal, you weren't always visually impaired. Tell us what happened. What led you here? What led you to lose your sight?
I was 17 years old, a happy, healthy cricket-playing kid whose dreams was to get into his father's family business, which is jewelry. I was about to go to US for my undergrad, and that one moment arrived. I was diagnosed with a rare visual condition called retinitis pigmentosa, which effectively meant that it will render me blind. And over the next 5 years, I turned blind. The only question which was in front of me, it was why me? Why me? I was in a state of despair, guilt, frustration, anger. That was my life. It changed in a moment. And each moment, the only thing I wanted to do was end my life. How did I turn back and now I'm sitting in front of you is one of my parents' decisions, which could have been the biggest nightmare for them. Early 2008, they decided to give me a shock therapy. And they said, if you think ending your life is the right thing, you should absolutely go ahead and do it. With their hearts beating hard, they gave me the permission. For the next 6 weeks, I tried various modes to end my life, but unfortunately I failed. And one of the moments when my parents asked me what's going on, I just answered back saying that to end one's life is not easy. And that's when my parents jumped in to give me my 2 principles which form the bedrock of my existence. And that's relatable to each one of us here. A, never give up, because if we try, there is a probability that we succeed. If we don't, there is a guarantee we fail. And second, what goes around comes around. Be nice and empathetic to people, because that's what you'll receive in return. And if you don't, you'll get what you sow. That's what makes me sit in front of you from 2008 as a different person.
And of course, you currently work for BlackRock. Before that with Stanchart. Your disability has not stopped you from living your dream, but it wasn't easy. How did you convince your potential employers to give you the chance?
Husband, I didn't find you, right? Else the journey would have been way easier. So once I decided that I had to try, I had to get a bread on my table. I had to work hard. During my troublesome years of my losing my sight, my friends who went to US, Kindle was my first accessible device, sent me books on financials and technology. That got me interested in financials. I read books like One Upon Wall Street, Common Stock, Uncommon Profits, Intelligent Investors. That sparked my interest. It's much easier to convince your friends and family than someone outside, and that's true for each one of us here. That got me started with a small long-short equity fund in 2008, did it well for 3 years. Then I wanted to move to the institutional side, where the challenge began, despite having a track record. It took me 5,000 cold emails, hundreds of interviews, tons of rejections and humiliations to land my first job. And again, when I wanted to move back to investing from trading to BlackRock, it wasn't an easy job. But it's finding that one yes, that one employer. When I reached BlackRock, in my 15 rounds of interviews, in none of the rounds they asked me about my disability, because they focused on my ability. And that's what, they took a chance on me. And that's what we all are a product of. Each one in this room is an outcome of someone taking a chance on you. Why can't we open our mind and take a chance on someone else?
And on your part, that shows grit. Nirja, I want to bring you into the conversation. Mm-hmm. You started Empower to highlight the issues to do with mental illness. And in India, that is a huge problem. 1 in 5 suffer from mental illness. How difficult has it been to bring this issue to light?
So honestly, initially it was very difficult, and it still remains to be difficult, because I think what we're trying to create is a cultural shift, a paradigm shift in mindsets. So of course now the conversations have started opening up. People are more aware. People are talking about it. I'm here, so Bloomberg has sort of got it on the main stage. So it is, at least I can say that 3 years back, where there was just no conversation around it, people were not even aware about it, to the point where we've come now is where we're at least talking about it. So we have moved a little ahead. There's a lot that needs to be done. There are so many issues related with mental health, the stigma, the awareness, the treatment gap. There's a lot that needs to be done, but at least we've made a start.
Let's talk about the stigma. People don't realize that those who suffer from mental illness include those who are very successful people, entrepreneurs who show grit and courage, suffer from mental illness as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's a myth actually that high achievers cannot or do not suffer from any kind of depressive disorder or anxiety issues. I think they go pretty much hand in hand. Even high achievers who are very successful can also be grappling with depression or can be grappling with anxiety issues. And that is something for all of us to understand, that mental illness does not discriminate gender, age, socioeconomic background, nothing. It can just happen to anybody. It can happen to you. It can happen to me. So it's pretty much out there. And that is something that we all, I think, initially when you feel you're having a mental illness or you're not feeling too well, the first thing that strikes you, no, it can't happen to me. But that's the biggest lie that you can tell yourself, because yes, it can happen to you. So if you are feeling that there are certain symptoms, or you don't feel very well, or you've had prolonged periods of a low mood or anxiety, which actually comes in the way of your daily functioning, then that's a red flag for you, and that is something that you must take cognizance of.
And Dhruv, we saw from the clip earlier on, you're an investment banker who ditched the job, congratulations, and started Miracle Careers. I mean, what was the inspiration? What inspired you to do that?
Well, for us, the idea was to radically give employment a spin and challenge the status quo. And logistics is a sector which generally is not really looked at very inclusive and people with disabilities. It's considered a hard sector like engineering, construction, transport. You still have sectors like hospitality and IT, which are considered soft sectors. So I thought, why can't we just hire people with disabilities in a sector which looks very tough and try to radically change it. So that was the idea that we started with, and also the great opportunity way back in 2010, 2011, where e-commerce was just starting in India. So a combination of factors led me to start Miracle. That came from.
The question is, how do you scale it? You've been successful, but in a very controlled environment and in a very small space. How do you integrate the hearing impaired into the wider circle?
Yeah. So we've already started doing that. Number of deaf people and hearing impaired / deaf people have come down. We have more of an inclusive workforce. We've also started 2 delivery hubs in Pune that only has women with disabilities. That's something, a new model we are tinkering with. They have a physical disability, they are not deaf. So with time and with opportunities, and we're going to pick up more and more models and basically put people with disabilities in the right patch. So we're breaking down the logistics value chain and see who can do what, basically, and play to the strengths. I fundamentally believe, and we believe as a company, that nobody has a disability. Disability is in your mind. If you play to everybody's strength, everybody's core competence, and then you strive for excellence. That's what we believe in, and we're fitting those pieces together.
So in the
So
end,
I could add something to Dhruv, that we all are temporarily abled, and the worst disability is one's bad attitude. There's nothing worse than a bad attitude.
Yeah.
And I would like to add to that, actually, that I think even with somebody who's grappling with mental illness, I think the misconception is that once you have a mental illness means you can never be good enough or you can't be productive. But that's a huge myth. And again, it's the attitude, and that is what leads to the stigma, because people generally, by and large, feel that if you have a mental illness, then you're just not good enough and you're not going to be able to give back in a productive manner. But that's not true. So I think if the attitude changes, I think more and more people will come out and actually seek help, because they realize that there is nothing to be ashamed of. At the moment, the stigma is so deep-rooted because culturally one feels that having a mental illness is it's a sign of weakness, or it just makes you feel vulnerable. It's something to be ashamed of. So if we can change that attitude towards it, it'll make a huge difference.
it's about changing the mindset. I mean, Dhruv, Vishal, I'm sorry. I mean, you're one of only 2 investors in the world who are visually impaired. I mean, what would you say to companies, employers? How do they overcome and overlook the disability and concentrate and focus on ability?
It's very simple. People need to focus on one's ability and not disability. We need to move from the feeling of entitlement towards empowerment, and we need to move from sympathy to empathy. Because the fact of the matter remains, it's nothing to be proud of that there's only one, that I'm among one of the 2 blind investors in the world. It just shows that how big the barriers are. It's our responsibility here to have an open-minded attitude, to say that we are a byproduct of giving people the chances. Like BlackRock gave me a chance, Standard Chartered gave me a chance, someone else gave you a chance. Someone gave you a chance for doing something what you are doing today. We need to ensure that we're giving people equal opportunities. Based on merit, the outcome could be equal or could not be equal. But at least we need to start giving people equal opportunities, a presence in the room based on their merit and their abilities.
But Dhruv, the barriers are huge.
Yep.
And you've seen it firsthand.
You're still seeing it. We see it every day. We're getting contracts from companies, making them understand that people with disabilities, deaf people, a physical disability can deliver products on time, can meet your SLAs. Your products are not going to get lost. They're not going to get stolen. The biases, the perception are so deep-rooted, it's unbelievable. I've had chats with senior managers of companies who actually started giving us letters and documents which were not important and not urgent as such because of fear that we will lose them. Where you have an urgent check or a demand draft or a letter for the CEO going to a DHL or a FedEx because they will take care of it. But that's a bias, right? It's a perception that people with disability are careless, they're useless. That we need to overcome. And it is not a serious job for them. It is something that their father and mother want them to do something on the side to make them busy, occupy them. You can't have a career. So there's all sorts of biases just are ingrained in us. So we are constantly fighting those.
And I also feel that really who defines what is normal? Because like your stats said that 1 out of 7 has a physical disability. Mental health stats say that 1 out of 5, that's in India, has a mental illness. So really then our population of so-called normal is really shrinking. And then what is normal? I mean, how do you define normal? If you're able to lead a happy life, I mean, and if you're able to cope with your stresses, if you're in a good space socially, emotionally, psychologically, and you have good interpersonal relationships, and you're able to give back to community in a meaningful manner, I think you're fine. I mean, I think that would be normal, right?
Yep.
So who gives anybody else the chance, the opportunity to really judge somebody and say that that person is not normal?
We talked about how the biases are so deep-seated, yet all three of you have expressed optimism that things will change in the near future. What would it take? What keeps you upbeat, Vishal, that things will change for those with disabilities?
Bloomberg inviting us for Equality Summit and having a conversation. That's all. Action speaks louder than words. Look at it this way, right? Technology today has empowered people like me who don't know Braille to work in a fiercely competitive industry like financial services and manage money. Technology has empowered me to live life independently, travel the world, and have conversations like this. 10 years back, it took me 5,000 emails to get my first job. 2 years back, it took me a few hundred emails to reach the right person. And hopefully, these hundreds of people sitting in this audience are our change makers. Even if 5% of you decide to make someone's life changing in the next 10 years and not focusing on numbers and just focusing on impact, I'm pretty confident that in the next 10, 20 years, this is going to be reality because 20 years back, maternity leave was a big thing, but today it's a normal. Who knows? 20 years down the track, people will be focusing on one's ability and not putting people on either on an emotional pity pedestal or like a daredevil pedestal and treat people normally. And maybe the normal definition will really be normal.
And Nirja, when you take a look at suicide numbers, they're rising.
They are.
Especially in developing countries and increasingly in developed countries as
Absolutely.
well.
The numbers are really increasing at a really alarming rate. So I do feel that if we don't arrest the situation and if we don't put in the right measures and the right interventions in place, it is only going to get worse. But having said that, I also believe that I think I do hope that we are more positive about it because I do feel that, I mean, take this, like when we started Empower 3 years ago and we had a press conference, we had all of 2 press people coming, all of 2 journos, because they were just not willing to even talk about a subject like mental health. I mean, it was mental health equal to rejection at the first go.
Mental health equals failure.
And it equals failure, exactly. And you don't want to talk about it, right? It's the topic is just rejected. But here I am today, we're talking about mental health on this platform. So that I think itself is a huge step forward. The second thing I think that I believe will make a change is I think the youth, the young adults, which is like 18 to 25, 18 to 30, are the ones who are going to be the change makers, because like Vishal, I think they are now sort of thinking broader, they think big. They don't want to get associated with all these dogmas and stigmas. So they are the ones who are going to make the change, and when they become parents and they rear their children and they kind of infuse new thoughts into them, that's the generation that's going to see the change. So I do believe that yes, if we do continue the way we are, the way we have started, I think we will definitely see a change in the next decade or two for certain.
Dhruv?
I think, as Vishal said, technology for sure. You'll be surprised, our entire office is obsessed with WhatsApp. Deaf people love WhatsApp. We do 3G chatting on video calls, and we sign and we get work done. 20 years back, 10 years back, who would have thought that? So when, just in case if a deaf person has a difficulty while delivering a package, he just calls the operation manager on WhatsApp. You don't need to speak, you can sign. Everybody knows sign language in our office, so technology is the way to go. And just to add, as Ms. Birla said, is the narrative is changing. You have sessions like this, Bloomberg, you see younger people getting more sensitive about things, talking about inclusiveness, diversity. It's coming in the narrative. So that will lead to, will have a snowball effect eventually with time.
If there's one action, there's only 49 seconds left to our conversation. If there's one step that needs to be taken by those present here today, if we can just go down the line, Dhruv, what should we do to embrace disability more?
Everybody here should go to the HR company, to the HR managers and insist to hire starting 5 people with disabilities in any department. Just start with 5.
I'd say the HR department needs to have more and more awareness sessions on mental health. And that's really in the hands of the HR to do that. Just start with simple awareness sessions on mental health and take it from there. That'll be a big change.
Vishal?
Firms just need to have an open mind and focus on one's ability and not disability.
Ladies and gentlemen, all this starts with a conversation, but a lot more needs to be done. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you
today.
so much.
Thank you so much.